Of all the tools used in filmmaking today, none come with the level of complexity not only in how they're used but how they're analyzed, like animation does. As this style of filmmaking has progressed over the years, it's been interesting to watch how a tool that allows for complete creative freedom could be so repetitive. It's sparked a discussion of what quote-unquote good animation really is. It's gotten pretty easy to pinpoint what makes for a horrible animated film, but when looking at some of the most acclaimed animations of all time, they're all extremely different, and I feel it's worth finding the similarity in these that make them so important. I made a video a while back about bad animation, because I think it's important to recognize pieces of work that do more harm than good, especially considering the audiences they cater to. But you see, a few months later, I'm realizing it's also important to pay attention to what does work well. And here's the thing, subjectivity is something to heavily keep in mind with this video. My idea of good animation will be completely different from a lot of people. But at the same time, I'm not just going to sit here and say, I like this one because it looks cool. Because while good animation is definitely a visually appealing spectacle, it's a lot more than that. Because in an industry like animation where a lot of money is being put into these films and the bar is ridiculously high, it's rare you're going to find a popular, poorly animated film. The only one that really comes to mind as of recent is Norm of the North. So let's get into it. What is a quote-unquote good animation? In short, it's a visually exciting piece of art that uses its medium to its fullest potential and paves the way for future work in some way. Now, this first point is pretty vague, yes, and I think it fits for a lot of the work we see nowadays. Sure, I don't think the Cars movies are the best things ever, but I do think with each film they become a bit more exciting with their animation. They remain consistently visually appealing. This is the subjective part of the video, if you couldn't tell already. I'm someone who likes a lot of colors, interesting contrast, and while I infamously have some negative thoughts on animated fur, I do think extreme realism can be pleasing to look at when used properly. The Good Dinosaur is nothing special in the grand scheme of the animation industry, but the landscapes in that film are beautifully realistic and vibrant. So here's where things get a little sticky. A lot of the films that I feel struggle to hit this mark are those that are live-action remakes of animated films that use CGI, which I understand is significantly different from something like this. But the reason I bring them up and kind of put them in the same category is because while yes, these quote-unquote live-action films have completely different workflows from your average Pixar film, they are based off of animated movies, and it's worth noting why these originals work so well while these new ones don't. Yes, it's true the CGI in this Lion King trailer looks pretty realistic and stunning, but an hour into this movie, are we really going to be like, damn, that shit looks so good? Who knows, maybe we will. The movie isn't even out yet, but I'm pessimistic because this has only been the case in one of these Disney remakes with impressive CGI, and it was The Jungle Book. From experience, after a half hour, it's pretty easy to get used to a certain animation style, and the best animated films are those that are able to remain consistently visually stunning throughout the duration. Some of the best films to accomplish this go about it by using my second point, utilizing every bit of potential this tool has to offer. This is a key aspect to some of my favorite films, period. If it hasn't already been emphasized enough, there's nothing I hate more than wasted potential, especially with something as exciting and limitless as animation. This is a treat you see in practically every Studio Ghibli film. There is an incredible self-awareness as to how many possibilities they have to work with, the answer being endless, and as a result you get ideas that could only be possible through this medium. Dreams that you'd fantasize about coming to life appear right before your eyes in a natural and beautiful way. Honestly, it's hard for me to not just turn this into a Studio Ghibli video because personally, every film of theirs that I've seen perfectly encapsulates everything there is to love about animation. An example that doesn't get enough praise though, in my opinion, is Wreck-It Ralph. Say what you want about these movies, sure the internet references are a little cringy in the second one, but you can't deny the world building through its animation isn't fascinating to look at. It doesn't approach its subject in a generic way the way the Emoji Movie did, it feels like an actual world that someone dreamt up. The way it blends a glitchy pixelated style while also having its fair share of realism with its lighting and managing to make it all feel unified and not a mess is something I definitely feel is worth appreciating. The film is dealing with something as dense as the internet and video games where there is already an overwhelming amount to tell, and it makes you feel satisfied with how much it's able to address. I owe a lot of this satisfaction through its use of animation. Maybe they're a little cheesy, maybe they're not the funniest thing or the deepest thing, but I'll be honest, these movies, they're pretty damn entertaining. Happy Feet isn't exactly a bad movie, but a good amount of that movie feels like wasted potential when you realize all they did was make penguins dance. It's just an idea that felt like it could have been done as a live-action film with CGI. Who knows? I don't know much about the details of how this all comes together. Who am I to say this? Lastly, I think there's one aspect that you don't see as often as the rest, but is an aspect that I feel shows what makes for a truly amazing animated film. This trait being a film that paves the way and introduces new ideas for future films. Now, obviously not every film can do this. This is a rare occurrence, and there are plenty of great films that aren't necessarily game changers. I just think that if a film is able to do this on top of accomplishing the other aspects I've addressed, it's something really special. While they didn't by any means invent stop motion, films and series like Wallace and Gromit, as well as The Nightmare Before Christmas, proved, in many ways, the possibilities that come with stop motion animation. Professor of psychology Brian Clifford puts it beautifully in an independent article where he writes, "Animation is more than a form of escapism. It reflects everyone's desire to be bold enough to turn against authority at some level. Being three-dimensional, Wallace and Gromit make the escapism that much more realistic. The idea that the films are for children is a myth. Adults find a release in them. I don't want it to seem like the best animated movies were there just at the right time before technological advancements, because we still, in the mess of all these bad animated movies, get films like Spider-Verse that prove the possibilities that come with telling stories through animation are endless. And let's not act like that's the only one, because apparently everyone thinks it is. Loving Vincent, a film from 2017, also pushes major boundaries in a lot of the same ways. I mean, just look at this. And there are even more subtle examples like Isle of Dogs, which may not have been the best animated film of the year, but honestly, in my opinion, is the most visually appealing stop-motion film I've seen. Just the sushi scene alone is incredibly impressive, unique, and exciting to watch. Live action is a great way of telling stories, don't get me wrong, but dude, how could you not love animation, especially the good kind? I can't think of a more exciting way to introduce children and even adults to certain concepts and ideas than through this medium. I only scratched the surface of how many examples there are to talk about, which is why I made a list on Letterboxd that you can check out in the description of amazing animated films that should be checked out. And through all of this, while yes, it is a style of filmmaking that we should be taking seriously, it's important to remember to have fun with it. It's why we fell in love with animation in the first place.